Georgann is a writer, a teacher, a master of observation, and an Emmy-winning documentarian of nature and culture. Born and raised in Atlanta, went to Duke University, and apparently stayed.
In the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood, yep. Claimed her ever since in North Carolina. She received a North Carolina Arts Council Fellowship and was one of the 4 founders of the North Carolina Writers Network, and has served as chair of North Carolina Humanities, Arts, North Carolina, and the North Carolina Literary and Historical Society. She is now the director of the Table Rock, a lot of you know Table Rock, Writers Workshop, and the author of 6 books of nonfiction from the University of North Carolina Press, including her latest that she did last summer for us, The Fabulous Ordinary, Discovering the Natural Wonders of the Wild South. And that was so much fun, so much fun. She is director and literary executor of the Paul Breen Foundation. I'm not going to tell you about that. You can look him up. You need to. Paul Breen, North Carolina.
Not the shoe guy.
No. Found his foundation. And then Rural Astronomy, the book of poems we're going to hear from today, is her first collection to be published. Is that right? So welcome, Georgann, Donna, and Damien, who accompanied the ladies on this research trip. And she can tell you about her newest book if she chooses to. Okay.
I'm happy to read some poems to you all. These are poems that I spent 40 years, they spent 40 years in a drawer, which might be a better title for the book. I mean, I've worked on them off and on, but you know, poetry, you're just trying to get just the right word. And sometimes that takes a lot longer than a whole book of prose. I've learned so much from writing poetry and from my editor who put this together. Just a word about the book. It's the through line of the book is kind of my relationship with my grandparents, who were very much nature lovers. They had a garden, they grew flowers for the church, they did all sorts of things on their 10 acres in North Atlanta, which was a dirt road when they moved there. When I was born, my parents bought another 10 acres up the road, and it was also still gravel. And this was Sandy Springs, if you know where that is. Yeah. So I'm older than I look. Actually, the development happened really fast. But so I'm going to introduce you to Bomer Henry Eubanks, who was born in Coleman, Alabama in the late 1800s, and Stella Bailey Eubanks, who lived up near Gainesville, and who really taught me about plants. This is, the first poem I'm going to read you is based on a photograph, and it's called Women's Work. In the photo, the bass are fat as loaves. Dad has one end of the stringer. Bomer holds the other, his mouth partway open. Straw hats shade their blissful eyes. What we don't see are Ruby, Stella, Doris, and Kate chopping the cabbage, setting our plates, stirring meal, buttermilk, and eggs, while feeding the misery of a wood stove in August, the deep grease only beginning to smoke. My grandmother, of course, canned things, and this is one of the food poems in the book. Her cucumber pickles. In August, still warm from sun, they gave up the vine. She scrubbed their spurs as jars chimed on the stove. Laid by in the cellar, those sacred green wheels took up the salt, bathed in the same sour gold that crossed her Savior's lips. Not until the new year would she let us loosen a single ring, pry up the mason's seal with a pop more festive than champagne. We'd fork those coins, fish out the pale eels of onion and dots of mustard roe, spread them like evening grace over our steaming plates. Our family kind of fell apart after a point, and this poem is sort of illustrating that. Of course, everything changes as through time with the family, and my parents got divorced. My grandfather is such a presence in this book, and it kind of freaks him out because he died when I was barely 6. But he was a big influence. Anyway, this is down the road. I was probably a teenager about this time. Congealed salad. Every Christmas, another novel combination. Just like our dwindling family. Odd flavors of boxed gelatin shot through with canned fruit, marshmallows, cream cheese, and pecans. Concoctions by my aunts, who always strayed from the recipe. This variegated dome, flipped from the mold and topped with a mayo star, was centerpiece among the steaming bowls, wreathed in green, slick as Georgia marble and motionless, at least through grace. But once the turkey was stripped and our dinner plates emptied, every serving rode back to the kitchen, none of us having managed our wedge. The wobbling portions set out by the sink, each weeping into its own lettuce bed. And here's a poem that gives you a little more idea about my grandfather. Sweet potato harvest. I was 6 when Bomer let me help him clear the patch on the far side of the pond, a 1/4 acre beside the scuppernongs that finally went soft and sweet about the same time he did that last year. He turned the earth completely over, never wounding a one, while I loaded the wheelbarrow, gently lifting every hobbled tuber like the unwashed feet of a whole Bible's worth of lame children seeking cure. When we finished, I shouldered his hoe and he rolled them home, both of us silent as we crossed the dam and climbed the path to park our harvest by the back porch stoop. Now yams are for Yankees, he said, hosing them down. Our kind, you just bake till the skin withers, and where the fork has pricked, they'll ooze a sticky tar that tells you they're done. Then he grinned and stamped the dirt from his boots. Nothing but old roots, he said, but they keep. And one more. Now, this is amazing to me, especially the older I get, the more amazing it is to me. Both of my grandmothers never learned to drive. And my grandmother lived to be 96, so somebody had to carry her everywhere. Now I have an older brother who doesn't drive, and I have to carry him everywhere. But this is an old memory. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. It's called Excursion. Bomer babied his 51 Pontiac 8, black and round as a hard-shell beetle. The pleated seats were yellow vinyl. A silver circle triggered the horn. One day he took a notion to drive us to Birmingham to visit his sister Ethel. Stella hurried, packed pimento cheese for me, peanut butter crackers for her. Bomer took a sleeve of saltines and a tin of sardines, though he would never eat while driving. Influenza orphans, they were farmed out. Ethel to Aunt Lim, near blind, never strict. Bomer got the short stick, raised by a grown cousin who fed him after the beagles. We drove toward afternoon sun, Stella dabbing in Bomer's wet temple with her gloved hand. To Stella, that car seemed a 2-ton puzzle, a man's machine. How would she change a tire, master the stem shift, toe the clutch, or set the brake? The steering wheel was scalloped for bigger fingers. I fell asleep before we crossed into Alabama and woke being lifted by my armpits, bare legs peeled from vinyl like taffy, freed from wax paper, my Sunday dress damp at the neck. We spread our picnic quick, a mile before Ethel's house. Vomer said he'd never tried her cooking. Okay. So y'all know what a found poem is? It's like something out in the world that just, seems like a poem. And I have several in this book, but I thought I would read you a couple of them. Donna and I travel a whole lot for our work, and we love church signs. One, she was especially clever. It was up in the mountains of North Carolina, and it said, "If Jesus had came today, where would you be?" And Donna said, "I would have went to hell." Another one we saw was, "Be ye fishers of men. You catch 'em, he'll clean 'em." And then we were in the North Georgia mountains when we saw right in this little church a sign that said, "Our preacher is on fire. Sunday, bring marshmallows." So rather than reproduce those church signs, what we did was we started paying attention to the signs that are out there. Somehow 3 words seems to be the perfect number. So this is 3 word signs, a found poem. Minnows, worms, crickets. God is able. Guaranteed credit approval. Emergency vehicle entering. We change lives. Beware sudden icing. Thunder cycles open. Support our troops. End road work. Death in family. Sweet corn ahead. Tanning beds, taxidermy, night crawlers. Okay. Oh, and here's one more little short one that I love. We found this on Ocracoke Island in the Outer Banks. At the end. Previous guests, please note, we now have air conditioning, Wi-Fi, and the rooster has moved. Okay. This is my little poke at the patriarchy. This is called Counting Change. In the 1950s, a few minorities still jingled in men's pockets. Miss Liberty, Lady Justice, the Buffalo, Bald Eagle, and 2 Indians, plus Mercury, that fleet Greek, and curious cross-dresser. When Watts and bras started to burn, the white men stopped minting mythic women, Native Americans, and endangered species. To cover, they fashioned Susan B., but made her too small, reminding us of our diminishment by inflation. Then Susan, too, was cast out of circulation, no more than a collector's item. In the 90s, we came to understand that Lady Justice is differently abled, while Miss Liberty begins to look suspiciously butch, those heavy calves, her big hands bearing the frozen torch. Still, she's barefoot and marooned, while teeming masses arrive by ferry to look up her skirt. Oh, here's a good one. one of our North Carolina writers named Tim McLaurin always brought live snakes to his poetry readings and novel readings. He raised them, he loved them. He also developed bone marrow cancer, and when he had a snake bite him, the snake died because the chemo was so strong. Anyway, this is called Snake Handler at the Writers' Conference. The room steams, rank with our mammalian heat, gathering from all the slow acts that have come before. When you took the stage, hauling the six-pack cooler and the crookneck stick, some poet ladies in the early rows rose and grabbed their purses. Face blank as paper, you knelt, cocked the box lid, and hoisted out what might have been a rope trick, the way the king and hognose tangled. Not the same danger as the venom delivered by your doctors, a chemo so strong it killed a snake that bit you one night. Now at arm's length, your charges offer their dangling message. No words, only punctuation, comma, slash, and question mark that you shake free into separate, grateful exclamations. Tim once wrecked his truck, and he had not been drinking, but he did have a fifth of bourbon in the truck, and he was trapped. So he drank the bourbon, and then the cops came and gave him a DUI. Bless his heart. Today, we have the great surprise of seeing feral hogs, small ones, babies, along 95 as we headed south. They were closer to the highway. They'd somehow gotten under the fence, and understand that fences are no burden for their barrier for them. But this poem, and now I just lost my place. Here it is. This poem is about another sighting of an animal along an interstate. The median. 6 a.m., like so many fragile mornings in ashen light that echoes the gray pavement before me. I clear the last mountain, lower the car through broad curves in first traffic and last fog, land on the flat stretch, putting the miles back. Then, like suddenly stirred coals, tail lights ahead, a choke of cars and semis braking. From the mist, the shape clarifies. A horse the color of dry blood steams up the median, hooves crushing weeds, her flanks quivering, a dark, archaic machine. Each driver's heart must drum with her run, weighing any sudden turn, not like interstate possum or dog to be pummeled to raw mounds. The horse forces us to crawl. Imagine the matted mane at windshield, belly riding hood, her long bones like pipe ramming our thin metal. She passes, headed where I'd come, safe only by traveling the divide. As traffic thins, I lose her in the mirror, wondering where the fence had broken, what boundary had given in. Could anyone know at this hour she was already gone? And I'll read you the title poem, which, to tell you the truth, my editor, we had several ideas for titles, and this was the only one that had been used in a poetry book. And he said, let's call it Rural Astronomy. That'll work. And so ChatGPT was just getting started, and I typed in Rural Astronomy after the book had been published, and it said Rural Astronomy, a poetry collection by Georgann Eubanks. They also refer to watching stars in the countryside at night. You can't copyright a title, though, so. Rural Astronomy. And I have a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains, so there's a number of poems here about the mountains. Tonight, the moon is a crock pouring blue john through the skylight. By April, it bathes the bed. Come May, it pools on the floor. By June, I must rise and take my face right up to the glass to drink in the pearly angle of light. So it is with the sun. You learning the Blue Ridge to follow the march of light and shadow, note where Venus arrives at dusk. Then the dipper begins to drop, retrieving water in a path so slow that each night's movement is no more than a single frame in a looping film. Y'all know about shad?
Yeah.
I thought I'd read another fishing poem. I had a friend who was a judge in a very rural county in North Carolina. His portrait still hangs in the courthouse there. He's no longer with us, but he was pretty irreverent kind of judge. One time he had a fellow who got stopped for drinking and driving, and the judge knew the guy and knew that he was being falsely accused by the policeman. And so he said, y'all come up to the bench. And the officer and the man came up to the bench, and he said, now you walked a straight line when you got caught. Is that correct? And he said, yes, sir, I did. And the policeman was like, ugh. And he said, okay, I want you to walk straight back on your hands. So he did a flip and walked out of the courthouse on his hands. And the judge said, just keep going. So I went down to fish in the river, and the way we fished is totally illegal. We fished with a net. So he had strung up a net before I got to his house across the river. So we would be sure and catch plenty of fish. But we had to go out and get them that night. Shad fishing on the Trent River. March midnight under a full moon and trail of stars. We take your pickup, drive past young pines in rows as certain as your father's plantings. We park beside a steep bank to test this tea-black river. I step in, my fingers in your clean, chilled hand. The canoe shudders. You paddle, one-armed, the spatulate end never leaving water, stirring us silent, forward. I shine the light. We find the end, or beginning, which? You pull, the net drops opals, persimmon and turquoise, rising sure as sun. But the river water stops my shine by inches, only giving up brown like beer glass, then closer gold like whiskey. There is new weight here. You say it even before the first come tumbling up, a cache of fresh coins, the scales catching light like lenses. There are 3, then 6, then 10. A trickle of blood soon coils between our feet while the shad thrash at the boat's bottom. No spawning from these, instead a mingling. Tomorrow's oil and cornmeal, the splatter and pop, skin crisp, fresh sweet, only the bones tossed back. So we took our catch downtown the next morning to the only breakfast place in town, and he introduced me as Georgann Eubanks, a shad consultant from Duke University. I hope I said enough to have this poem make sense to you. Sightseer. If you look back carefully, there's a good chance that what you've become is really what you've been all along. Take me, for example. It's not possible to say for certain when I went from being an amateur to a professional sightseer, from dilettante to expert tourist. I was in 2nd grade when the guide passed me his ever-ready flashlight deep inside a Tennessee mountain. We'd already seen 7 states that morning, and now we were a knot of families in the dark heading toward the so-called Ruby Falls. I'd won the flashlight because I could explain the difference between stalactite and stalagmite. Not much different from in my child mind from new teeth, top and bottom, sprouting in my own mouth. So began my fact collections and the first lure of leading a group of strangers somewhere exotic, even if falsely lit by ruby-colored lights. All right, I'm going to finish up with another grandparent poem, and also kind of the tragedy of our times in terms of development. This one's, it's kind of hard for me to read. This is about Boomer and Stella. Their gardens. Now I am the keeper of the crab apples along the roadside, the boxwoods that line the drive, the azalea and camellia in pine straw beds beside the tulip tree. I am the keeper of liriope, of ajuga in shade, the variegated acuba, the snowball bush of boutonnieres, caladiums nodding in boxes along the stoop. I am the keeper of her clematis that climbs the trellis beside the garage, the fragrant moonflowers that cling to the screen porch siding, and the bank of gardenias beyond. I am the keeper of the hybrid tea roses in the full sun bed, the coral honeysuckle that climbs by the pines, his peach and plum trees that she would not spray, the quince by the picnic table, the hydrangea and spirea. I am the keeper of the necklace of poppies, the daffodils that lined each ledge, the horsetail near the basement door, the sweet tea olives and summer begonia. I am the keeper of the marigolds and pansies by the shed that she started from seed, the sweet shrub and dogwood along the path to the pond, his gladiolas and dahlias cultivated in rows, ready to cut for the Methodist altar. I am the keeper of the catalpa and its caterpillars for bait, the mulberries held in purple-stained fingers, the muscadine and scuppernong tunnel beside the rows of sweet potatoes that he dug in fall. I am the keeper of the daylilies, the bass and brim, and tadpoles and bullfrogs bellowing in our dreams, the lonely pear by the pond that always ripened late. I am the keeper of my people and their plantings, the land sold for mansions, the landscape memorized. I am the last among the flourishing. So